Thank you for coming. So as Joe mentioned, I am co-owner of B4 Networks. I'm the COO. I am not a tech, but I am the founder of B4 Power, which is a STEM program for girls. We're a not-for-profit that does free education on STEM topics for girls 6 to 11. I'm pretty operations and people focused. I've had the fortune to work for some fairly large companies, Dell Canada being one of them, if you're Canadian, Canadian Tire. So understanding operations at a pretty large level is something that's kind of just built into who I am. I'm also a board member for MSP Geek, which is why there's random Gootzes on here, so yes. And basically I submitted this talk because Mendy dared me, so if he's in this room, I blame him. So I kind of hate slide templates, which is why I've given the nod to Roost in the bottom, but the rest of it is just going to be my own version of whatever. So when I thought about submitting this talk, I was like, I really hope somebody talks about ROI. I really hope that someone is focused on this. As a business owner, I've had, and we'll talk about that in the next one, I've had the misfortune of having people kind of go off the rails and not being technical to be able to hold them accountable. So I feel like there's an important part of the conversation where we take from owners to technicians and teach them how to think about that from that perspective. So I'd like to tell you what bad looks like. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to change the names. Some of them might be better changed than others. You'll understand that in a second. My talk, yeah, sorry. It's really just to highlight the things like that we have done and put in place. I don't want anyone to look at this and say, this is how you have to do it, but I think these are the things that you should be considering. It's like a journey that we all go on. And part of the reason why I'm nervous is not just because I'm public speaking, but also because I have to tell you just how bad it was in our organization for you to understand how this became a focus for us. Okay, so Joe, not you. We had, I guess the title would have been like automation engineer. That would have been the closest thing to what we would have called them. Who was with us for like 8 years and helped us develop our lab tech environment and did all the scripting. And it was a great relationship in the beginning. But IT is a place where burnout is real. Let's be honest about that. And I don't think that they were well suited to stay into it. So as we got going on the journey, they did lots of interesting things, interesting to be able to tailor the world to what they want. And if you have somebody who's in charge of your RMM, I highly suggest that you check what they're doing, because when alerts get noisy, the answer is not to turn them off. And that was their solution. So actually, we alerted, like most people do, on space, on not just workstations, but on servers, just to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. And so when all of a sudden one of our largest customers couldn't read or write anything to their server, we were like, what happened? I'm trying not to swear here today. There was a lot of swear words that came out of my mouth. And it turns out that's when we discovered that he had turned that off. So how embarrassed were we to be saying we're a proactive company, we're monitoring these things, only to find out that no, we were not, because somebody just decided to turn it off and there was no oversight on that. Just keep in mind, we were 8 people at the time. Everybody was doing everything, right? So really, I think when I do this talk, one thing I want to say, and I don't know if I say this in another slide, so I'm just kind of riffing right now, but it's a really fine balance for those of you who are owners in this room to just hand these things, these processes that we sell, this consistency that we sell, to engineers who don't have the same stake in the company as you do, right? So when I talk about ROI, when I talk about teaching it, what I really want to be discussing is like, how do we give people agency? Because the engineers in this room do not want to also have to come and ask for permission every time they want to do something, right? So I don't know if can I scroll down? It's not showing me the rest of my notes. The next example I could give of this, where this is important to make sure of, we had a tech called, and this name was Christopher. He spent 6 months automating a client auditing process, and in the end, it was an Excel spreadsheet, and he just watched a ton of anime. And I mean, like, that's embarrassing to admit, but honestly, it's a reality that happens. Engineers you guys want to do these things for a reason. You want to make your life easier, and I get that. But there needs to be a conversation. Like, I don't want to advocate for red tape. I'm not trying to do that either, but there needs to be accountability. And if you look at some of the people who've been on this stage presenting or who are becoming leaders in stuff like the open mics and whatnot, they're people who have that level of accountability in their MSPs. They're engineers who are now being, included in conversations. So there's interest on both sides to make that happen. So what did we learn? This is my overall, it's a communication plus synchronicity equals extreme clarity. So those tales of woes, that's just the stuff I'm willing to disclose on stage, because I don't know where these videos are going to end up. There's more, but that's a bar conversation for later. I think it's important to remember that communication is key. If your engineers who are automating are not business owners, you have to remember that if you don't tell them what you're looking for, if you don't tell them what's important or where the business goals are, if they're not included in those conversations, how in the hell are they going to be able to be a part of the conversation and be able to be doing the right thing, right? So communicate, over-communicate. Make sure that that goal is extremely clear and that it's delivered in a uniform way. Remember that just because you put something in a Teams message where most of us want to just ignore what's happening in Teams or things like Go, if you're like our workplace and you debate weird things in the middle of the day and it just disappears, you want to make sure you have it in many different places so that way people know, whether that be a roadmap, whether that be, if you're doing traction and you have 90, you can put that stuff in there, whatever the case may be, make sure it's in many places so that anybody who is, sparked by an idea can turn around and draw, at that moment of how that relates to the overall organization's goals. The clarity that I'm talking about too is it's not just in the end product, it's also the viewpoint that you value about the automator themselves. So I'll talk about our team approach a little bit later, but I have many people involved in our automation team, and they are not dedicated full-time to automating. They are doing something else as a regular job and then jumping into automations. And I do that because I value something about their skill set. I don't believe in one person, this is my choice, in one person or organization being in charge of automation only. I think there's a lot of beauty in spreading that out over a team. So we're all dealing with some version of shortage of talent. That's a pain felt not only by the owners, let's acknowledge it's also felt by the rest of you who are engineers as well. When somebody leaves and you get more put on your plate or you have to deal, with something else that you didn't plan on dealing with, that's added stress for you and it makes you want to leave, let's be real. So looking at how we can spread out something that's so integral to our businesses is super important. I think we've all made the joke about cloning that one person in your organization, right? If I could just clone this person, I would really love to encourage people to think of automation as a form of cloning. You're taking the thought process that exists within this person's head, the way that they do things, and being able to duplicate it and multiply their capacity, right? So if you grow, the amount of people that can do these things and the skill set of them, then you can teach them to see things in new ways. Because all of your eggs in a basket is a disaster, as I just clearly identified to you. That client that was left with a server issue and that we had to, deal with all those things last minute, they almost left. That was a $30,000 a month contract at the time. So imagine, me sitting there going, I can't believe that was that close, to being something that we lost over something where I took my eyes off of it. So the more people that are involved, in my opinion, is beneficial because you get more feedback about what's going on as well. So I think that, maybe I'm gun shy. Feel free to debate me later about having one person, but for me, that's an important thing. The team approach is how we do everything at B4 Networks, from our help desk to our professional services. We communicate a lot. We're pretty cohesive. There's a lot of banter back and forth. So I think that taking that into automation is only going to be, and what we've seen so far is only going to be a force multiplier for us. So when I was watching Aaron's intro at the beginning of the conference, being a new speaker, when you submit something, you kind of wonder, what was it that they saw that they appreciated? And I think his talk about Center of Excellence was I felt like he was looking at me because this is a conversation we've had before about how to spread it out. And I understood a little bit, about what he wanted to talk about, how we can do that. So part of my talk will go through that as well. As a COO, I am the person who sets the direction in terms of what we're automating and what we're doing, because I want to make sure that it aligns with the things that I know that are on our roadmap as a company, but also that our clients are saying in the feedback that we're getting, right? And one of the things that my intro slide should have probably highlighted is that I'm a firm believer in diversity. So our company is actually parity. We have as many women as we do men, and that is also in tech. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when you have a diversity in your team, diversity in the approaches, not just a skin color or a gender, but also in thought processes and problem-solving skills, you get way more interesting, creative problem solving. And if we could take this team approach, instead of just putting it in the silo of one person and the filter, by which that they look at the world, you can really have everything come together and come from a place of maximum knowledge. I think that's true in automation as well. So in our team, we have people who are very strong in customer service. To Peter's point before, people were asking how do you bring in and get the automations that are going to work for somebody else? Well, part of our process is getting feedback from the people inside of our organization, the same as he mentioned, who are admin, who aren't involved in tech, but might be because they're every single day hearing the whatnot of the office, or they're dealing with their own frustrations in their role, able to give us feedback on things that we could be working on, right? So if we want to understand how we can shift to what our customers might want or what automation as a service even looks like, it's like anything else that we do, we have to test it, right? We have to have this breeding ground for where we get ideas from on the things that we don't do every single day. And I would strongly recommend that you talk to the people in your organization that are admin, your marketing people. And if you don't have that, then the customers, kind of like what Roos did when they first started, the customers that you feel the most aligned with in terms of core values or just how they operate, approach them and say, look, this is a thing that we're investing in. Can we sit down and talk to you? And, and this benefit, you'll get access to this. It's a really good way to then take it out beyond this because there's so much opportunity, not just in how we do business, but in how they do business to be able to make them more efficient. And as I think, why does this matter? Why does ROI matter? Why is that something that anybody should look at? And I'm going to tell you that anybody who is wondering that question should probably take a look at Brandon and Jared. If you are an engineer and you want a say, if you want a seat at the table, then these are things that you can show beyond just how much time you bill per hour to be able to, be a part of the conversation and further your own career or further your own life that way. And on the ownership side, what would you do for a tech that turned around and made your operation more efficient, made you more money, right? You have to be thinking about these things in those terms because it's not only how you make sure you keep your techs, but it's also how you make sure to teach them also about the conversation of ROI, because then they're going to understand it from their own perspective as well. So if you are an owner, you are also going to bring to the conversation the business logic that's required to do the automations that business owners would want. You might be thinking about, okay, I want, our professional services to have A, B, and C automated. But if you stepped outside of the tech part of it, then you can turn around and apply it to the rest of the business. You have an understanding of how a business should work. You understand P&L, you understand some of the finance, even if you're not the one doing it, you can bring your logic to it. So I don't think that you should just hand it off to somebody else and not be involved. It's very important for you to be giving that perspective as well. This is also, and I'm just going to say because it's not on this slide, but this is also how we change the conversation. Look, I don't have a problem with cybersecurity. I think it's a necessary thing. But the conversation on selling cybersecurity is very fear-based, right? We always want, and I'm sure every owner in this room who's ever had to try and drag a client into a TBR, we want to be involved in the process of planning for their business. Talking about automation as a service, talking about how to make them more efficient, how to make them more money, is how you get in the door for that. So when I want to give you advice about, what to consider when calculating your ROI, I think having a dev team is wonderful, but as I was talking to another MSP, I think it was the first day that we got here, it's not feasible for everybody, right? So this model that I'm talking about, where you take people who are currently in your help desk or, from anywhere in the organization, you're getting them to automate, there are some things to consider. So if you had a DevOps team, you'd probably be looking at the ROI of that team by how much they saved in the year, right? And you would be considering their salary only, right? But when we talk about taking a tech out of help desk or out of professional services, you need to be considering their actual billables. You need to be thinking about what's their burden rate for them for each hour, but then also what are you losing by taking them out of being billable, right? Time to ROI is great, but again, that's for teams that are focused and dedicated on only ROI. If you're splitting that, then you need to have a metric that you're considering what you're losing, because that is the part that people are afraid of. So if you're tracking that and you make your thresholds to be able to meet what it costs you to take out somebody from your business, then you're making sure to keep track of your numbers in the right way. So let's say, for example, and I'll give you an example, their fully burdened rate is $50 an hour. So that's all their EI, their whatever it's called I'm Canadian, so I don't know what it is in America. But all of the things that they cost you, whether that's a health plan or whatever, right? So $50 an hour, and then you charge $175 an hour. So any calculation that you're doing should be done at a cost of $225 per hour. That means that you can balance that fiscal ideology properly, right? And then you will set your threshold percentage properly as well. So the threshold is like whatever percentage that you are looking for in terms of ROI so that work can be approved, right? So we made our training for this to teach our techs this. And I'll get to that in a second about why that wasn't always the best. So this percentage can actually be adjusted later. It just helps you focus for right now in the places that are going to get you the most ROI out of the gate. And then you can ameliorate your automations, make the ones that you've done better, make them more efficient, and then focus on nitty-gritty. But the point is to get started, right? So the review process that I mentioned here, it's not just to review the results in time saved, but I want you to be looking at the current automations and make sure there aren't any changes that could be done. I can't tell you how many times we've watched something on the rock calls, open mic, and got inspired how we could tweak something or make an adjustment. If you aren't attending that and you're in this room and you're a Roost customer, you need to. Because I learned so much on there, which I'll also talk about. And then, so plan to review that quarterly and yearly. Make sure that you're making the progress that you want to. So this framework that I've talked about, that's part of the title of my slide. So this is the measure by which we look at everything. It's part of our automation roadmap. It's part of the approval process, and it's the goal for each person on our team to be able to automate. And I even mean each person on my team. The right checks and balances have to be in place, though. So everyone who can touch Roost goes through the training to be able to operate within this framework, and that training helps prep them for the process themselves, before doing this type of thing on the regular. That way, we're building a proper automation culture internally. This first framework is kind of important. So all solutions need to be worth it. Automating for the sake of automating that costs you something like client goodwill and experience is never worth it, okay? I think in this day of AI, I know there's a bingo card, I'm sorry I said it, and transitioning to removing the human, we should always be asking ourselves and building in pauses to consider if this is really what's needed or the best outcome, right? I want my technicians to be thinking about this. No one likes getting stuck on a call on an IVR and you're like screaming into the phone going, I just want an agent, I just want an agent, because all the options they're giving you is not what you're looking for. Give me a real person, right? On paper, IVR is a great form of funneling people. It's a version of automation, and it's great when the options are simple and clear and easy to use and you can bypass if you need it, right? So you need to make sure the human side of the interface is not convoluted or difficult to deal with. So if you're building something that you're asking a customer to touch, then you have to keep that in mind. We don't want them to be raging or angry at us like most of us have been when we're calling a telecom company, right? This framework is first for me because I think the human intervention in any kind of automation is important. I know that for us internally, we've had a few of our incoming clients mention to us that there were other IT companies that told them they can't call anymore. They can only submit tickets through email. If you are one of those people, I bet your customers do not love it because they look actively for a replacement when that happens. So I'm not looking to automate that part because I know that's important. If your customers don't care, then that's wonderful. Check in with the values of them and what they hired you for to make sure that you're not automating something that makes you special. The next one is like the no-brainer, why everybody is automating, right? All solutions should be seeking time savings and consistency. We can build really cool stuff. I think I've heard about some interesting things that other people have built. I don't want to comment on that right now, but again, attend an open mic. But if you don't make it clear, the owners in the room, what you want automated, you're going to leave it to someone else that might not have that same goal as you. I'm going to keep repeating this because it is a very important thing to remember. It's very easy to say, that's a technician, they're the technical person, they're the one who's doing this, I don't want to get in their way. It's not getting in someone's way to have the conversation and create clarity, right? The leadership is supposed to do that. You're supposed to communicate the vision for what you want, and then that allows people to do what they need to do. Okay, this is a long one. So what does any of this mean to your customer? So we were talking earlier about like automation as a service is going to be a thing, right? This is a practice because customers can kind of be ridiculous. If you get too efficient, and automate things, they perceive that you're not really doing anything and it's just a push of a button, and what do they need you for, right? But if you don't make yourself efficient and you want to build them more, they definitely have a problem with that, right? They're going to be shouting that from the rooftops. Understanding how to have that conversation that shows the value of automation and plan for how you would include it in your TBRs, how your help desk technicians can raise things, or even if you have account managers or client concierges, how they listen to a customer's woes and raise that up for us to look at automation and then translate what we did to solve it. These are all things that are going to be super important to be bringing up in those cadences that you have with your clients to be able to get them to understand why staying with you is important, right? And, when you think about it then from an opportunity standpoint, technicians really need to be taught how to hear that opportunity. This is true for automation, but this is also true. We teach our technicians also how to hear for sales opportunities, right? When someone's complaining about a computer and how slow it is, if there's an issue, we're trying to fix it, but then they might also be complaining about something else at the same time that could lead to a sale of something else. So we're teaching people to look for opportunities already. Widen that to automation opportunities as well. The last one, having clarity allows more than one tech to be a force for automation. The techs that do well in this space, they don't really want to be bored. That's why everybody keeps saying do the easy, repeatable process and free up their time. Learning new things is like fuel, right? And if you bore your technicians and you don't allow them to be able to do things that interest them, they're going to leave. And that's not something that we want, right? We're all struggling with finding people. We're struggling with our techs having burnout. To take care of our people means we have to consider their mental health as well. The people that are I guess leaders in this space are seeing the benefits themselves and how not only their careers are growing, but they're giving space and room for other people to join the party so that they don't move on. So this framework, I told you before, there was parts of it that didn't work. So I love me a good process. I'm operations. It was on paper. There was an Excel spreadsheet. I built training, I delivered it, and I was like, okay, we're going to use this Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to make you guys do this. And I think I saw a few eye rolls. And then I was on an open mic call, and I'm going to give a shout out here, although I'm loath to do it because it's probably bad for Calvin. And he had showed a workflow that he had created to do some business math on retention and retraining costs and what it would cost if you didn't give a technician a raise. I don't know why I hadn't conceptualized myself already, how Roos could do some of the decision-making that I'm talking about here, but it was like our light bulb went off. And I really appreciated that in the moment, that community really kind of sparked that creativity that way. And I knew that this was what we were going to do. So I went to my Brandon and I was like, okay, this is my idea. And between him and Lisa, who is the one who spearheaded it, they kind of made my dream come to life. Now, don't ask me for data on this yet because it'll be live on Monday of next week. But this is what we designed in order to make this happen. And if the PowerPoint gods are with me, this will work out properly. Okay. This is our Halo instance. Let's see if, did you do it or okay. So this is an example here. This is walking through creating a new ticket. So this can only be done if you're entering a ticket as B4 Networks, which is our company. It's an automation request. And this is, I pick myself. I mean, the title explains itself. The category is a match for all the current ticket processes. It's also important that that's the case because it's part of the decision-making process to pull from ticket data. This form has many fields. Some contribute values that calculate the ROI using Roost, and then approves it based on our meeting our current desired threshold and helps set the impact and urgency as well. So the rest of the form has weights. We've included descriptors in our training, but for the purpose of this talk, it's not necessary because the goals for your own company might be different than ours. These are the areas that we highlighted would be important. Once this form is submitted on Halo's side, which we will see in a second, it calls out to Roost to, yeah, I want to make it entertaining, right? Can I say swearing aloud? Oh, it just blipped off. Yeah, there we go, it's cycling. So when this goes out to Roost, it decides, whether it's approved. It also decides the impact and urgency of the ticket. And as you'll see in the ticket notes too, down below, it actually writes the data right back into the ticket to let us know, what the ROI calculation is, what time we're going to save. I obviously skewed the numbers here to make sure it was approved, just for the sake of not messing around. So the main driver for the approval in that case is Roost doing the ROI calculation. That's like a middle column, right? So it auto approves if it meets the threshold. The technicians are accountable for the numbers that they put in. Before anybody says the thing that you're all thinking about how techs can just skew the data to be able to get their thing approved, but then they're accountable for that. They're the ones who filled out that form, and they have to stand by what they put in. You can also turn around and measure how well they're able to judge how long something is going to take. And depending on what workflow or whatever they're working on, you can also judge where there might need more training, or they might need to be able to play more to develop their skill set. And if it doesn't meet the threshold, it doesn't say no. It puts it in review. I like business math, but I also like keeping my people happy, right? There's an element to some of the things that they might want to build that might be more of a passion thing. As long as I can understand the business sense behind it, I might allocate less time in a week for it and not let them go right away at it. But if they can make a case to me personally, that's the time to do it. That's where you bring the human into it, and you don't worry about the automation part of it, right? So the next thing that we wanted to do was to just remove me as a bottleneck, if possible, and help techs understand how to prioritize, right? So the impact is actually decided by data within the ticketing system. It calls out to ask for the numbers on the category that was selected to find out how many tickets are currently open. But as we know, ticket numbers is not the only measure. We track our backlog on everything, so it also evaluates the backlog of current tickets. So if you have a category that has a high degree of both, it's more likely that an automation will get a high impact rating so that it gets worked on first, right? And then urgency is actually decided by the form values. Those were the things like the stickiness, the efficiency. That's a scale that we created and has weighting, and depending on where it falls on the scale, which is explained in our training, it will give higher urgency to that as well. So that is my explanation of what we did and how I think that other people can consider that. Is there any questions? Oh, you have to do that, Joe. Did I take your line?
No. First of all, thank you. How about that? Amanda, thank you again. That was fantastic. We do have some time for questions, and as usual, I come on with questions. I think I see a couple of hands in the back. Can we get a microphone over there? While we're waiting for a microphone to get over there to that side of the room in the back,
Of course it's Mandy that has a question.
I will ask a kickoff question. Sure. And the kickoff question is this. Do you have dedicated developer hours in your company? And the reason I ask is, so this is like a team approach.
Yep.
And you've got to get each person sort of involved in automation. Are there dedicated hours in the week where each person will carve out some time for learning this?
Yes, actually, there's time where there's just hours, and then there's certain people that get days, right? So it just depends on the skill set of the person and what we need in the organization.
Fantastic. Okay. And then if we could jump to the back, and just a reminder, your name and maybe just a quick description of where you are in the country and what your business focus is. Thank you. Or where you are in the world, I should say. I'd love a question. I know there's people from Australia here. I haven't heard them yet.
So I'm Mendy from MSP Geek and Rising Tide from Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah,
Thank you.
woo.
I think that was Kelvin. I don't know. So I have more of an observation, less of a question per se. I really enjoyed the presentation, Amanda. There was a specific part where I feel like technicians may have checked out. I was actually talking to a few technicians yesterday, and the comment came up about finance and something like that, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not me. I don't deal with that stuff," and they immediately like checked out. And I just wanted to call out that that's not really the right mindset. Right? You were talking about ROI and things like that and how it impacts the business. And these are things that you should be considering when you're automating. You should be tuned into those conversations just to make sure that you're not doing something that's not helpful for the business. You want to be helpful to the business and helpful to finance and everything else. So it is something you should be considering and talking about and listening to at the very least.
How much easier is a conversation about a raise with a business owner if you're telling them exactly what kind of ROI you're giving them? It's something that makes, when I said it makes your life better, it's exactly what Mendy said. It's important for people to understand because then you can turn around and leverage that on growing your own career and your own, goals and aspirations for what you want to do.
Yeah, and there's also alignment there, to your point, Amanda, in terms of how much value that technician's adding to the business, but also the business owner's feeling like, well, not only are you adding value, the whole team is improving our profitability. So yes, I can come back to you with a financial offer, correct? Yeah. Additional questions? We have one up front. I'll do the mic for this one. And if there's other questions, pop up your hand. We'll get another mic to you.
Coming from a leadership position, my name's Jack. I work with RIT, MSP in Texas, focusing on the AEC industry. We have a pseudo center of excellence. I know you had mentioned that. I'll find so often our CEO and me will have very different ideas on what to automate, and there's kind of a disconnect there, and that bridge is closing. From your experience, what are the most common misalignments you see that could be kind of corrected, if that makes sense?
I mean, there's two that I can think of off the top. When I was talking about how engineers are fueled, again, I'm going to try not to swear. I want to play with cool-ish, right? Like I want to see what it can do. Does that mean you should? Does that mean that there's a justification for spending the amount of time that you might putzing around with whatever it is you're doing? So there's that disconnect. And then there's I have to make the P&L make sense, and then the engineer who wants to turn around and make their life easier, right? So the reason why I thought this talk was important and why I said what I said in the beginning is because I think it's actually a way throughout the whole company for both people to get on the same page and to see it from that perspective. And in the end, I think MSPs and their customers would win, right? So it's this training that I talked about, like being able to have something internally where you get people to understand and get on board with what that means, ROI means. You're going to have to give it once, and then you're going to have to give it again. And you're going to have to revisit it again in 6 months because people will have a different frame of perspective. It's like anything you learn in business, right? You might hear in a course or something like this one time, and then you have 12 months to implement, and you go and you do it. And then if you were to take the same course again, what you pull out of it is something different. Actually, that was a conversation I had with Rob in the hallway. So the talk that he gave before this, I've actually heard it 3 times now. And for me, what I was learning each time I heard it was different, right? It doesn't mean there wasn't value. It's just a different conversation. So just keep having the conversation. Just keep revisiting it would be my biggest piece of advice.
Any questions in the back?
Really see.
Did I miss anyone? We got one in the middle.
Hello, my name's Alex. I'm from Cape Cod. I'm from an MSP called IT Works. And I know you talked about like what the for lack of a better term, the C-suite wants and the techs want. And I think I speak for everyone here with how do you get clients to properly voice what they want? Because my experience is they don't know what they want.
Yeah, I think you don't have to ask them what they want to be automated. I think you have to ask them what sucks about their day, right? Like the same as you approach your automation, you look at it and you go, what would I like to not do again? If you get somebody talking and complaining, not only are you like a mini therapist, and that's a great relationship to have, even though it sounds terrible and toxic, but it is actually, you're gonna learn a lot of things about what bothers them, and they're not gonna tell you how to solve it. You're gonna hear how to solve it. You're gonna know what technical solution can be applied to that, right? So having your account managers even sit sometimes with your it could be the finance person, could be marketing, whoever the stakeholder is that you want to push at one time. Sit and ask them what they're doing, get a bit of a snapshot, but also what they don't like doing and what they hate about their job. I mean, if you do that, if they ever leave and go anywhere else, you better believe the first thing that they're going to do when they get to that new company is, oh, you got to work with this IT company that we worked with before because they had all these cool things, right? So the nice thing about something like Roost is that it's something that makes you sticky. That's something we put in our form for a reason. We are trying to find ways for customers to want to stay with us by delivering value, but also making it very difficult to leave on a whim, right? This does that.
Any other questions? I have one closing question for you. Sure. Again, team approach. The team is using some dedicated hours or dedicated days to get up to speed on this. Have you been shocked or pleasantly surprised by a non-technical person suddenly diving into automation, or any surprises in terms of who is excelling at this in your organization?
I don't want to say a non-technical person because we haven't, I'm going to be honest, we haven't opened that up. We've started that conversation. We haven't opened that up fully, but I will say one of our help desk technicians might have been a little bit of a, no taken away from you, Brandon, but you want to build things that are super whatever, but she's very client focused. She is a person who is on the phone and she's being that therapist that I talked about, and she hears client complaints. And she was like, I'm going to build things in Power Automate to make my life easier. I'm going to do that for some of our clients. And she didn't really even ask. She just started doing it. And I was like, what would happen if we empowered other people to do the same? And that was kind of an aha moment, which I think is what you're really asking. And surprised me because she is so in tune with what they need. And it was a reinforcement that having someone that is maybe not as technical or maybe not as deep as what you would usually have for an RMM automator or whatever would be valuable, right? And if we can understand how to motivate them, then it's much easier to have that conversation with the non-technical people or the maybe not as technical people at our clients.
Got it. Fantastic. Well, Amanda, thank you again for your time and walking us through this. Folks, have a hand for Amanda.